A Place Called Home by Laurie Wick. Chapter 7. When Christine awoke again, it was to the pressure of a hand on her brow. The room was shadowed, dim, and easier on her eyes. She focused on the owner of the hand. A tall, handsome man with deep blue eyes was smiling at her. "Welcome back. How do you feel?" "Thirsty." Christine's voice was a hoarse whisper. The man helped her drink and then settled back on the pillows before he spoke again. "You were asleep each time I checked on you today. Maggie tells me your name is Christine Bennett." She nodded and he went on. "I'm Dr. Mark Cameron. I brought you here from the alley." "What were you doing in the alley after dark?" As he spoke, his hands were moving. He held her wrist for a minute and then checked her shoulder. He paused in his movements to meet her eyes, telling her plainly he was waiting for an answer. "I was looking for some place to eat and somewhere to stay for the night." She had been raised to tell the truth. She would not answer if it meant lying. "You're not from Baxter?" He knew what her answer would be. "No." "Did you come in on the train?" "Yes." "You rode the train dressed as a boy?" He watched her lips compress and an angry sparkle into her eyes. He knew she was pulling away from him. He placed his hands gently on Christine's upper arms and said in a quiet but firm voice, "Christine, don't close me out. I realize you don't know me, but I want to help you if I can." He paused and watched her face intently for signs of softening. "Whatever it is that made you dress up like a boy and leave your home is not going to go away just because you ran from it." "You don't know how wrong you are," she cried in a desperate voice. "I had to get out of Spooner." Spooner. Mark carefully masked his surprise at how far she was from home. Then a thought came to him. "Christine, you were stabbed in the alley. Was it someone you knew? Did you have something someone wanted?" "I didn't know the man in the alley. He said he needed a drink and wanted my bag. He got it, too. I think he did. You didn't find it in the alley, did you?" "No, I'm afraid not." She looked so young and vulnerable. Mark's heart went out to her. He decided to try one more time. "Talk to me, Christine. Let me help you." To her utter horror and embarrassment, her eyes filled with tears, and in an effort to keep from crying, she began to talk. This man, stranger that he was so compassionate. She could not stem the flow of her words as the entire story came spilling out. Outside of a question here and there, or a word of encouragement, Mark said nothing. His mind raced as he tried to sort through all the facts she was telling him. He agreed that she had no choice but to leave Spooner. He reassured her when she began to fret about the money in the bag, telling her everything was going to work out. Once through talking, she was exhausted from the strain and terror of remembering. He helped her with another drink, this one mixed with a sedative she never noticed. She whispered a thank you as her eyes closed in sleep. Not until Christine's breathing had evened out in deep sleep did Mark turn his attention to the third occupant of the room, whom Christine hadn't noticed. Suzanne sat quietly near the door, where she had been during the entire exchange. Mark was sure the concern and sympathy he saw in his wife's eyes mirrored his own. Having left Christine in Maggie's capable hands, Mark and Suzanne checked on their own sleeping daughter and then retired to the bedroom. As they prepared for bed, Suzanne spoke for the first time. "I'm sure you realize she never intended to tell you a thing." "I'm sure you're right." He paused and then added, "I can't help but think of Emily as a young woman, possibly alone. I would want someone to help her." His voice was heavy with despair. "Oh, Mark, you know God would take care of her, just as I'm sure God put Christine in our lives because she needs us." They were in bed now. Suzanne lay on her side so Mark could rub the small of her back. She had done the wash today and ached all over. She was relaxed and near sleep when Mark spoke again. "I'd like to see her up on her feet tomorrow, but I think she'll be embarrassed in front of me after tonight." "You're probably right. Maggie and I can go in and get her up and dressed if she's ready for it." "Since she's healing well, that'll be fine. Thanks for handling it. Good night, Sue." He pulled her close and kissed her, and they both fell asleep with prayers in their hearts for Christine Bennett. Back in Spooner, once again, in the ornate but dimly lit study, sat a man behind his desk in another late-night interview with the small, scruffy man who did his dirty work. "Are you all set to get in tonight?" "Yes, sir." "Remember, if you get caught, you're on your own." "Me and the boys never get caught." "Go alone." "What?" "I said go alone. The three of you will wake the entire house if you search her room together. You go alone, and quietly search through her clothes, drawers, everything. You mustn't leave a thing disturbed, or that busybody Mrs. Hall will have the sheriff out again." "Do you want I should get rid of her?" "Of course not," the man behind the desk snapped. "Will that be all, Mr. Jeffers?" "Yes, just as long as you continue to keep an eye on my partner and report to me regularly." "Yes, sir, I'll do that." "You may go, then." As always, the little man was more than anxious to get away. He knew he wasn't much, but he didn't smile in a person's face and then pull a knife when his back was turned. Two-faced. There was no other way to describe Vince Jeffers, and he didn't trust him. Drawing deeply of the night air, he stepped out of the rear of the house. The house, he thought, smelled evil, if that were possible. As he moved along in the shadows to do his night's work, he decided that when this entire episode with the Bennet girl was over, he would take his share of the money and move on. He was getting too old for this type of work. His new resolve made him quicken his pace in an effort to get the job done and be gone.